There's a painful truth about human nature that most people learn too late. The moment you start chasing someone, whether it's a romantic interest, a friend, or even a business opportunity, you've already lost them. It's a cruel paradox, isn't it? The more you want someone, the more effort you put in, the faster they run. And you're left wondering what went wrong, replaying every text message, every conversation, trying to figure out when you became so invisible. I watched this happen to a friend named Marcus. Successful, intelligent, genuinely good person. But when he met someone he liked, something shifted. He became available at all hours, constantly texting, cancelling his own plans to accommodate theirs, essentially reshaping his entire life around this person. Within weeks, the interest was gone. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because he'd telegraphed something fundamental. I need you more than you need me. And that imbalance, that desperation masked as devotion, killed any chance he had. The hardest part? Marcus had no idea what he'd done wrong. In his mind, he'd been attentive, caring, present. He'd done everything the modern world tells you to do: communicate, show interest, make yourself available. But there's an invisible force at work in human relationships that nobody talks about. When you chase, you create an energy of lack. You're essentially saying, I'm not complete without you. My happiness depends on you choosing me. And people can feel that neediness like humidity in the air. It's suffocating. But what if I told you that the ancient Stoics discovered something powerful about this dynamic? They understood that the secret to becoming magnetic isn't about tricks or manipulation or playing games. It's about something far more profound, becoming someone who doesn't need to chase because you've built something within yourself that naturally draws people in. It's about transforming from someone who seeks value from others to someone who is the value. The Stoics taught that your power lies not in controlling others, but in governing yourself so completely that your presence becomes magnetic without effort. Marcus Aurelius, who could have demanded anything from anyone in the Roman Empire, wrote in his private journal about the importance of self-sufficiency. He understood that the moment you need something from someone else to feel complete, you've given away your power. And with it, your attractiveness. This isn't about becoming cold or playing hard to get. It's about something far more substantial. It's about building a life so rich, so full, so aligned with your values, that you become genuinely unbothered by whether someone chooses you or not. And paradoxically, that's exactly when people start choosing you. When you stop chasing, you become unchased. And in that transformation, everything changes. Before we continue, I want you to do something meaningful. Write this phrase in the comments. I stop chasing, I start becoming. This isn't just a comment. It's a commitment to yourself. It's acknowledging that your worth isn't determined by who wants you, but by who you're becoming. Write it as a promise that you're done giving your power away to people who have to be convinced of your value. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Build your inner world until it's unshakable. The problem with most people isn't that they're not interesting, it's that they've outsourced their happiness to other people. Their mood depends on who texts them back. Their self-worth fluctuates based on who shows interest. Their entire emotional state is hostage to external validation, and you can feel this energy from a mile away. It's heavy, needy, exhausting. I knew someone named Elena who transformed her entire life by understanding one simple truth. You must become your own source of fulfillment. She'd spent years in a pattern of intense relationships that always ended the same way. She'd meet someone, feel that rush of connection, and immediately make them the center of her universe. Her hobbies became about them. Her friends got neglected. Her own goals took a back seat. And every single time, within months, the person would pull away, citing that she was too much or too intense. The turning point came after a particularly painful breakup. Instead of immediately looking for the next person to fill the void, Elena did something different. She started building. She took that painting class she'd been putting off for years. She reconnected with friends she'd abandoned during relationships. She started writing, not to impress anyone, but because it made her feel alive. She traveled alone, which terrified her at first, but taught her something invaluable. She could create her own joy. 6 months later, Elena was unrecognizable, not physically, but energetically. She had stories to tell that had nothing to do with relationships. She had passions that lit her up from within. She had a life so full that dating became optional rather than essential. And that's when something interesting happened. People started gravitating toward her, not because she was chasing them, but because she'd become someone worth being around. She had an inner richness that was genuinely attractive. The Stoics called this building your inner citadel. It's the fortress of self that doesn't crumble when external circumstances change. Epictetus taught that you must secure your own happiness from within, because anything external can be taken away. When your joy, your purpose, your sense of worth all come from inside, you stop chasing, you stop needing, and in that self-sufficiency, you become magnetic. Start today. Identify 3 things that make you feel alive that have nothing to do with other people's approval. Maybe it's creating something. Maybe it's learning something. Maybe it's achieving something physical. Pour energy into those things. Build a life that feels full even when you're alone. Because when you do, you stop showing up to people as someone who needs them to complete you. You show up as someone who's already complete, and people can choose to join you or not. That shift in energy changes everything. Lesson 2. Master the art of absence. Your presence becomes valuable when it's not constant. Here's what nobody tells you about availability. Constant presence creates invisibility. When you're always there, always responding immediately, always making time no matter what, you become like wallpaper, present but not noticed. You've accidentally communicated that your time, your energy, your life has no other demands. And on a subconscious level, that makes you seem less valuable. Michael learned this lesson the hard way. He was dating someone casually, and everything was going well until he made himself completely available. Every text was answered within minutes. Every invitation was met with enthusiasm. Every evening was cleared just in case plans came up. He thought he was being considerate, showing interest. But what he'd actually done was eliminate any mystery, any challenge, any reason for the other person to wonder about him. Within 2 weeks, the dynamic had shifted completely. Messages that used to be returned quickly now took hours or days. Plans that used to be confirmed enthusiastically became vague maybes. The interest hadn't died suddenly. It had evaporated gradually as Michael became too predictable, too available, too easy. He'd removed the natural tension that keeps attraction alive. The Stoics understood the principle of scarcity in a different context, but it applies here. When something is abundant, it loses perceived value. When it's scarce, it becomes precious. This doesn't mean playing games or deliberately ignoring people. It means having a life so full of purpose and activity that you can't always be available. It means having boundaries around your time that you respect as much as you respect others. After that experience, Michael changed his approach entirely, not by calculating or manipulating, but by genuinely filling his life. He started training for a marathon. He committed to a project at work that required deep focus. He reconnected with his own interests and friendships, and suddenly his availability became genuinely limited. When someone texted, he'd respond when he finished what he was doing, not immediately. When someone wanted to make plans, he'd check his actual schedule, which was now actually full, rather than pretending he needed to check. The shift was immediate. His absence created space for others to miss him. His limited availability made his presence feel more valuable. People started putting in more effort to secure his time, not because he was playing games, but because he'd become someone whose time genuinely mattered. The Stoics taught that you should never give freely what you don't value yourself. Your time, your attention, your energy, these are your most precious resources. When you treat them as valuable, others do too. Practice this. Don't respond immediately to every message, not to be manipulative, but because you're genuinely engaged with your life. Don't clear your schedule automatically. Have commitments that matter. Create natural gaps in availability because you have a life worth living. Your absence becomes a reminder of your presence's value. Lesson 3. Stop seeking validation. Become your own source of approval. The most unattractive thing you can broadcast is neediness, and neediness shows up in subtle ways. It's in the way you fish for compliments, the way you constantly check if your message was seen, the way you over-explain yourself, the way you seek reassurance that you're wanted, that you're enough, that you're interesting. Every time you seek external validation, you're announcing your internal deficit. I watched this destroy a potentially great connection for someone I mentored. Sarah had everything going for her: intelligent, accomplished, attractive. But she had a validation problem. In conversations, she'd constantly steer topics back to herself, looking for recognition. Did you see what I posted? What did you think of my presentation? Do you think I handled that well? Every interaction became an opportunity to fish for approval. The exhausting part wasn't the questions themselves, it was the energy behind them, the desperate need for confirmation. People could feel that she wasn't asking out of genuine curiosity, but out of an internal emptiness that needed constant filling. And that kind of emptiness is a bottomless pit. No amount of external validation ever satisfies it for long. You give a compliment, and within hours, she needs another one. You offer reassurance, and by the next day, she's seeking it again. Seneca wrote something powerful about this. To wish to be well spoken of, to wish to be thought clever, to wish to have riches is not being free. When your emotional state depends on what others think, you're enslaved. You've given strangers and acquaintances the power to determine your inner peace, and that's not just unwise, it's unattractive. People are drawn to those who seem secure in themselves, not those constantly seeking proof of their worth. The transformation happened when Sarah realized something brutal but liberating. Other people's opinions of her were none of her business. She started practicing radical self-approval. Every time she caught herself about to fish for validation, she stopped and gave it to herself instead. I think I handled that well. I'm proud of what I created. I don't need confirmation to know my worth. At first, it felt awkward, almost arrogant, but over time, something shifted. She stopped bringing up her accomplishments in conversations. She stopped checking social media metrics obsessively. She stopped interpreting every interaction as either validation or rejection of her worth. And paradoxically, as she stopped seeking approval, she started receiving it more genuinely, because people could feel the difference. She wasn't fishing anymore, she was simply being. The Stoic practice here is clear. Build such a strong internal measure of your own worth that external opinions become interesting but irrelevant. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he didn't need others' good opinion to be at peace. Practice this by catching every validation-seeking impulse. Notice when you're about to say something to get a reaction. Pause. Give yourself the approval you're seeking from them. Over time, you'll build genuine self-sufficiency. When you stop needing validation, you stop chasing it, and people notice. There's something magnetically confident about someone who doesn't need constant reassurance, who doesn't seek approval, who simply exists in their own conviction. That kind of self-contained confidence is rare, and it's irresistibly attractive. Lesson 4. Set boundaries like a Stoic. Protect your peace relentlessly. Most people confuse being good with having no boundaries. They say yes when they mean no. They tolerate disrespect because they don't want conflict. They let others cross lines because they fear losing the relationship. But here's what the Stoics understood. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're standards that command respect, and without them, you become invisible. I knew someone named Daniel who had this problem. He was everyone's go-to person when they needed something, but nobody's priority when he needed support. Friends would call him at 2 a.m. with their problems, but wouldn't return his calls for days. Dating interests would keep him in rotation as an option, never committing, but never quite letting go. And Daniel tolerated it all because he thought being accommodating made him valuable. The wake-up call came when someone he'd been seeing casually for months cancelled plans last minute again for the third week in a row. Daniel, frustrated, finally asked where things were going. The response was devastating, not because it was harsh, but because it was honest. "I don't know. You're nice, but I guess I don't really see you as a priority." That sentence revealed the truth. By having no boundaries, by always being available regardless of how he was treated, Daniel had communicated that he didn't value himself. So why would anyone else? The Stoics taught that self-respect isn't negotiable. Epictetus said that you must establish what you will and won't accept, not from arrogance, but from self-preservation. When you have no boundaries, you signal that your time, energy, and dignity have no value. You become someone who can be treated any way without consequence. And that's not compassion, that's self-abandonment. Daniel's transformation was radical. He started saying no without explanation or apology. When someone consistently showed up late or cancelled plans, he stopped making new ones with them. When dating interests wanted to keep things undefined indefinitely, he stated clearly what he wanted and walked away when they couldn't meet him there. It felt uncomfortable at first, almost selfish. But something interesting happened. The people who genuinely valued him started respecting him more. The ones who'd been taking advantage simply faded away, and new people who entered his life treated him differently from the start because he'd established from day one how he expected to be treated. His relationships became reciprocal rather than one-sided, and the quality of his connections improved dramatically because he was no longer accepting scraps of attention from people who didn't truly value him. Setting boundaries isn't about being difficult or high maintenance. It's about having clear standards for how you allow yourself to be treated. It's saying, my peace, my time, my energy matter, and I won't compromise them for people who don't genuinely value them. When you set clear boundaries, you stop chasing people who don't respect you. You start attracting people who do. The magnetic power of self-respect cannot be overstated. People are drawn to those who value themselves because it signals something fundamental. This person knows their worth, and that's attractive. Practice this starting now. Identify one boundary you've been afraid to set. Maybe it's about response time. Maybe it's about how you're spoken to. Maybe it's about the kind of relationship dynamics you'll accept. Set it clearly and unapologetically. Then hold it. People will test it. That's when you prove whether you meant it, and those who respect it are the ones worth keeping around. Lesson 5. Cultivate detachment from outcomes. Want nothing, lose nothing. The Stoics had a concept called preferred indifference. These are things that are preferable to have: relationships, success, health, but aren't necessary for your inner peace. This subtle distinction is what separates people who chase desperately from those who attract effortlessly. When you need a specific outcome, you reek of desperation. When you prefer it but don't need it, you radiate confidence. This lesson crystallized for me through watching someone named James navigate dating. He'd had his heart broken badly and came out of it with a powerful realization. His happiness couldn't be contingent on anyone choosing him. So he approached new connections with genuine interest, but zero attachment to outcome. He'd meet someone, enjoy their company, invest in getting to know them, but hold it all loosely. If they reciprocated, great. If they didn't, also fine. His peace wasn't on the line either way. The shift this created was remarkable. Because James wasn't desperately trying to make things work, he never compromised himself. He didn't pretend to like things he didn't. He didn't hide parts of himself to be more appealing. He didn't reshape his life around anyone. He simply showed up as himself and let people decide if that worked for them. And counterintuitively, that authenticity combined with non-neediness was incredibly attractive. There's a story about Marcus Aurelius that captures this perfectly. As emperor, he could have demanded loyalty, but instead he wrote, "I cannot control another's actions, only my own responses." He understood that trying to control outcomes, especially ones involving other people's free will, is futile and destructive. The only thing you can control is yourself, your choices, your values, your actions. Everything else is beyond your grasp. When you chase someone, you're trying to control an outcome. You're saying, "I need you to choose me for me to be okay." And that need creates a toxic dynamic where your emotional state is hostage to someone else's decisions. But when you practice detachment from outcomes, something liberates inside you. You can put in genuine effort without clinging to results. You can be authentic without fear of rejection, because rejection no longer threatens your core peace. I started practicing this in all areas of life. When applying for opportunities, I'd do my absolute best, then mentally release it. I prefer this outcome, but I don't need it to be at peace. When meeting new people, I'd be genuinely open and interested, but never attached to whether they became close friends or not. When pursuing romantic interests, I'd show up authentically, but I stopped trying to convince anyone of my value. Either they see it or they don't, and both outcomes are fine. This isn't cold indifference, it's warm non-attachment. You still care, still try, still invest, but you don't suffer when things don't go your way because you've accepted that outcomes aren't entirely in your control. And that acceptance makes you paradoxically more attractive. People can feel when you need something from them versus when you'd simply appreciate them. One feels heavy, obligatory. The other feels light, optional, freeing. Practice outcome independence this week. Whatever you want, a relationship, a job, a friendship, pour genuine effort into it, then consciously release attachment to the result. Remind yourself, I prefer this, but I don't need this to be complete. Watch how that subtle shift in energy changes not just how you feel, but how others respond to you. Desperation repels, freedom attracts. Lesson 6. Become emotionally self-sufficient. Build your inner fortress. The most powerful form of attractiveness is emotional independence, not the fake kind where you pretend you don't have feelings or needs. The real kind where your emotional baseline is stable regardless of external circumstances, where other people can enhance your life but can't devastate it, where you have an inner fortress that remains unshaken even when the outside world is chaos. This was the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner citadel, a place within yourself that no external force can touch. It's not built in a day. It's constructed through daily practice, through learning to regulate your own emotions, through becoming the source of your own stability rather than seeking it from others. I met someone named Anna who embodied this after years of hard work. She'd been emotionally dependent most of her life. If her partner was happy, she was happy. If they were distant, she fell apart. Her moods were entirely reactive to others' treatment of her. But after a particularly devastating breakup where she'd completely lost herself, she committed to something different, building emotional self-sufficiency. She started with small practices. When she felt anxious, instead of immediately reaching out to someone for reassurance, she sat with the feeling. She practiced self-soothing techniques, breathing, walking, journaling. When she felt lonely, instead of desperately filling the void with company, she learned to be comfortable in her own presence. She discovered that most of her needs for others were actually just unprocessed emotions she didn't know how to handle alone. Over time, something shifted fundamentally. Anna's emotional baseline stabilized. She still felt things deeply, still valued connection, but her sense of okayness no longer depended on anyone else. She could be disappointed without falling apart. She could be alone without being lonely. She could want someone's presence without needing it to function. That foundation of emotional self-sufficiency changed everything about how she showed up in relationships. The Stoics taught that emotional turbulence comes from giving external events power over your internal state. Epictetus wrote that people aren't disturbed by things, but by their views about things. When you master your own emotional responses, when you become your own source of stability, you stop being desperate for others to regulate you, and that self-containment is magnetically attractive. Think about the people you find most attractive, not physically, but energetically. Chances are they have this quality. They don't need you to manage their emotions. They can be disappointed without making it your problem. They can handle bad news without collapsing. They have an emotional steadiness that makes being around them feel safe rather than draining. That's what emotional self-sufficiency looks like, and it's the opposite of neediness. Start building this today. The next time you feel an intense emotion and want to immediately reach out to someone about it, pause. Sit with it for just 15 minutes. Process it yourself first. Over time, extend that window. Learn to be your own first responder to your emotional states, not because you should do everything alone, but because you should be capable of doing it alone. There's a massive difference between choosing to share emotions and needing to offload them. When you become emotionally self-sufficient, you stop chasing people for emotional regulation. You stop being that person who falls apart when not getting enough attention. You become stable, grounded, present. And that stability is what allows others to relax around you, to trust you, to be drawn to you. Because being with you feels like relief rather than obligation. Lesson 7. Pursue excellence, not people. Let your purpose make you magnetic. There's a certain type of person who's universally attractive regardless of physical appearance or social status. They're the ones deeply engaged with something larger than themselves. They have a mission, a craft, a purpose that consumes their energy in the best way. And the attraction doesn't come from what they do. It comes from the energy of someone who's genuinely absorbed in becoming excellent at something. I saw this principle in action with someone named Marco. He'd spent years focused on dating, constantly thinking about his relationship status, analyzing every interaction, wondering why things never worked out. His conversations revolved around dating struggles. His free time was spent swiping on apps. His mental energy was consumed with finding someone, and paradoxically, the more he focused on it, the more it eluded him. One day, after yet another failed connection, Marco decided he was done. Not with dating, but with making it his focus. He'd always wanted to build furniture, but had never committed to it. He started spending evenings in his garage, learning, practicing, creating. At first, it was just distraction, but gradually it became genuine passion. He'd lose track of time perfecting joinery techniques. He'd wake up excited about a new project. His conversations shifted from dating struggles to furniture design. Within months, Marco was a different person energetically. He had calluses on his hands and sawdust in his hair and stories about his latest creation. He posted his work online not to get attention, but to track his progress. And something interesting happened. People started reaching out, asking about his work, wanting to see his workshop, genuinely interested in him, not as a potential date, but as someone doing something interesting. One of those people became his partner, not because he'd been trying to attract them, but because he'd become someone worth being attracted to. He had passion, purpose, growth happening visibly. The Stoics taught that virtue is its own reward, but there's a beautiful side effect. People are drawn to those pursuing excellence. Not fake excellence for approval, but real growth for its own sake. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire, was obsessed with philosophy and self-improvement. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, dedicated himself to writing and teaching. Epictetus, a former slave, committed himself to wisdom. None of them did these things to attract anyone. They did them because excellence was the point. But their dedication to something beyond themselves made them magnetic across centuries. When you pursue excellence in any domain, you become interesting. You have something to talk about beyond yourself. You have energy directed outward rather than inward. You become someone with a story unfolding rather than someone waiting for their story to begin. And that forward momentum is inherently attractive. Stop making people your hobby. Find something that genuinely fascinates you and pour energy into it. Not because it will make you attractive, though it will. Do it because becoming excellent at something is worthwhile, regardless of who notices. But notice how the energy shifts. When you're building something, creating something, mastering something, you stop having time to chase people. You stop being available for people who don't value you. And you start attracting people who are inspired by what you're building. The most magnetic people aren't those desperate for connection. They're those deeply connected to something larger than themselves. Find your thing, pursue it relentlessly. Let your dedication make you interesting and your growth make you attractive. Stop chasing people and start chasing excellence. Watch how the former becomes effortless when the latter becomes your focus. Lesson 8. Practice strategic indifference. Care without desperation. There's a final principle the Stoics understood that ties everything together. The power of being able to walk away. Not coldly, not cruelly, but calmly. The power of genuinely not needing any particular outcome so much that you'd compromise your peace for it. This is what they called preferred indifference in practice, caring about things while remaining emotionally independent from their outcomes. The problem most people face is they care desperately. They need things to work out. They're terrified of loss, rejection, abandonment, and that fear makes them clingy, compromising, willing to tolerate disrespect just to keep someone around. But the moment you telegraph that you need someone to stay, you give them all the power, and power imbalances kill attraction. Strategic indifference isn't about not caring, it's about caring without attachment to outcome. It's genuinely hoping things work out while being completely prepared for them not to. It's the sweet spot between investment and detachment. You put in real effort, but you're not destroyed if it doesn't work. You value people, but you don't need them. You'd prefer certain outcomes, but you're at peace either way. This is the ultimate evolution of everything we've discussed. You've built a rich inner world, so you don't need anyone to complete you. You've mastered absence, so your presence has value. You've stopped seeking validation, so you're not desperate for approval. You've set boundaries, so you're not tolerating disrespect. You've cultivated outcome independence, so you're not attached to specific results. You've become emotionally self-sufficient, so you're not seeking emotional regulation from others. You've pursued excellence, so you have purpose beyond relationships. All of this culminates in a state where you genuinely don't chase anyone because you don't need to. You're not playing games or pretending indifference. You've built such a complete life that while you'd enjoy having certain people in it, you don't require them. And that authentic indifference, not cold, but calm, is the most attractive quality a person can have. The final truth the Stoics understood: you attract what you are, not what you want. If you're desperate, you attract people who exploit desperation. If you're needy, you attract people who resent neediness. But if you're complete, confident, purposeful, and at peace, you attract people who respect those qualities. The work isn't in learning to attract people. The work is in becoming someone worth being attracted to. So stop chasing, start becoming. Build a life so fulfilling that adding someone to it is a bonus, not a necessity. Develop character so strong that your presence is felt even in your absence. Create such inner peace that others feel calm around you rather than anxiety. Pursue excellence so relentlessly that your growth inspires others. And practice such radical self-sufficiency that you never need anyone's validation to know your worth. When you do all this, something magical happens. You stop asking, "How do I get them to like me?" and start asking, "Do they meet my standards?" You stop being the one who waits for responses and become the one people hope will respond. You stop being an option and become a choice people are grateful to have made. Not because you played games, but because you built yourself into someone genuinely valuable. The Stoic trick isn't a trick at all. It's transformation. It's the recognition that the only person you should ever chase is the best version of yourself. Do that relentlessly, and everyone else will do the chasing. Now I want you to commit one final time. Write in the comments, "I stop chasing, I start becoming." Let that be your declaration. Let it remind you that every moment you spend chasing someone who doesn't value you is a moment stolen from becoming someone undeniable. The world doesn't need more people desperately seeking validation. It needs more people secure enough to offer it. If this resonated with you, if you're ready to stop chasing and start becoming, subscribe to this channel. We explore Stoic wisdom for modern life every week. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone still stuck in the exhausting cycle of chasing. And remember, you are not trying to become attractive to everyone. You're working to become so aligned with your values, so secure in yourself, so purposeful in your life that the right people recognize your value immediately. And the wrong ones? They'll chase, but you'll be too busy becoming to notice. See you in the next video. Until then, remember, the best revenge against those who didn't choose you is becoming someone they can't stop thinking about. Not out of bitterness, but as a natural consequence of choosing yourself first.